In carry out, a lot of people are so worried about the solo queue, and they're so worried about the various support picks. Now, a lot of support players will play various support in solo queue from now on. So, is there any tip for anyone who's gonna play various in solo queue? You guys are not carrier. Your teammates are not T1 players, so keep that in mind before you try various at home.
Throughout competitive League of Legends history, there have been times when the meta deviated from conventional strategy. Metas such as Sonateric, lane swapping, and funneling come to mind. The most recent instance of a stark meta shift is the rise of ADCs being played in a support role during the 2023 spring season. However, before the season even began, rumors of ADC supports started to surface. Ashe and Jhin support were often picked to counter Heimerdinger, a champion that Barrel of DRX pioneered to win the 2022 World Championship. In fact, it was Barrel himself who pioneered Jhin as a counter to his signature Heimerdinger support. As leagues around the world began their 2023 spring splits, it became increasingly evident how difficult it was to make ADC supports work. While lots of teams agreed it was strong on paper, not many teams were able to translate it to wins on stage. On patch 13.1, ADC supports saw a modest presence in leagues all across the world, with a 20% pick rate in the LPL and a 12% pick rate in the LCK, LEC, and LCS. Win rates hovered slightly above 50% in all leagues except for the LCK, which was inflated due to the success of T1. Only T1, with Keria at the helm, seemed to truly master the playstyle of Double Marksmen Bot, with a staggering 8-1 win-loss record when executing the strategy. So how did T1 manage to win nearly all their games when playing Double Marksmen Bot? Let's dive into their drafts to find out. Here are T1's drafts in their 8 wins and 1 loss when using the strategy on patch 13.1. Right away, we notice a huge presence of Jace and Sejuani in top jungle. T1 recognized that drafting Double Marksmen Bot lends itself to constructing a poke composition, and thus, Jace adds more poke pressure along with the Double Marksman. Sejuani is a sole tank on the team, and Kassadin, Azir, or Victor were popular mid-champions to round out T1's comp. In patch 13.3 and 13.4, T1 drafted tankless compositions, winning through early game skirmishes and crucial late game picks, rather than straightforward teamfighting. In all of these Double Marksmen Bot compositions, one thing is constant, which is the heavy emphasis on poke, supplemented by picks such as Jace top and Ziggs bot. Nearly all of the ADC supports fall into the poke and pick category, offering long-range CC to easily catch enemies. This is why Varus, Ashe, and Jhin are so useful in the support role when they have less gold than farming ADCs. T1 also drafted pick champions such as Elise, Kassadin, and Annie. These champions do not excel in front-to-back 5v5 teamfights, and T1 recognized that they complement the pick-poke ADCs in the support role. Azir, Gragas, and even Kalista further supplement pick potential, while also offering disengage when the enemy team drafts a hard engage compositions with champions such as Maokai, Malphite, and Ornn. Gragas Cask, Azir Shuffle, and Kalista's Fate's Call both serve to pick off the enemy and mitigate engages from the enemy team when necessary. And lastly, Sejuani and Sion were picked when T1 wanted a tank to ensure that they could fight for objective and vision control when necessary. In all of these games, T1 had a clear win condition with their pick and poke composition. Snowball the early game with Prio in their Double Marksmen bot lane, and dive early if possible. In the mid to late game, T1 would ARAM quite often and deny enemy vision in order to poke them down, and when T1 saw an opportunity to pick off the enemy, they went for it. They tried not to team fight, since their team compositions were not meant to fight front to back. Let's now take a look at a few of these games to closely examine how they executed these win conditions. In T1 vs Kwangdong Freaks, T1 ensured that Elise starts at the enemy blue for a vertical jungle clear. Set also places a ward outside of Wolves to see if Sejuani ever pats down bot. Elise starts blue, and Set is constantly hovering in case Lucian Nami were to fight her at blue. From the very first minion, T1 start trading as aggressively as possible, fighting into minion aggro, and Keria even burning his barrier for maximum HP value. This is all planned to ensure that T1 gets lane prio and can crash the wave for a dive. Kwangdong Freaks see Elise on Krugs, but since Sejuani isn't in the area, Lucian Nami are essentially checkmated. They have no lane priority, and therefore the crash and dive is inevitable. Sejuani meets Elise in her jungle to prevent the dive, but Faker has already pushed his mid wave against Victor with absolutely no early game prio, and Faker is ready to assist with a dive. T1 crashes the third wave, and Faker even pops Ghost because he recognizes he's late. During the dive, T1 juggled turret aggro, with Elise taking aggro first with her volatile spiderling. While Elise could have kept taking aggro because she has repel, the dive went well due to Kwangdong Freaks panicking and Faker being present for a 4v3. Ultimately, the dive was a success because Lucian was denied several waves, and the fourth wave is about to crash and be denied as well. 3 minutes later, T1 go for a 4v3 dive bot again. T1 timed the crash of mid and bot wave perfectly so that Faker can roam bot without losing much mid. And again, the dive works great. Set has a huge shield on his W, which makes diving and taking turret aggro very straightforward. T1 accrue a 3k gold lead at 7 minutes, and now let's see how they snowball their lead. To snowball, Keria and Owner practically live in Kwangdong Freaks' jungle, while skipping their own camps. This is because T1 prefer both team getting less farm than both teams handshaking farm. Additionally, denying enemy vision is incredibly easy with Ash's Hawkshot and Umbral Glaive. Here, Elise and Ash take Sejuani's Raptors right in front of her. At 17 minutes, T1 go for a reset. They immediately reclaim vision in Kwangdong Freaks' jungle, skipping their own camps again. The game ends at the 25-minute mark, after T1 secure Baron at 20 minutes. In T1's game against Gen.G, Owner is playing Elise, and they set up for a dive on the third wave once again. Chovy has prio mid, so he is able to respond to the dive with TP. But T1 only pressure a dive to burn his TP, and they immediately back off when it's channeled. This is a minor win for T1 after Faker died for first blood. In this game, both junglers hover near bot, but in spite of this, T1 reattempt their dive a minute later, knowing Chovy has no TP. Keria chunks pays, so it's effectively a 3v2 dive. Owner initiates the dive, and D aggroes by using repel. Gumayushi then gets an incredible double kill with his piercing arrow, and Sejuani waits for her slow and inevitable death, which is handed over to Kassadin. While T1 accrued a sizable early game lead, the game was far from over. In the mid-game, T1 team fought incredibly well, even with their poke pick comp. T1 understood that to approach an objective like Dragon, they must arrive early and poke down Gen G enough to dissuade them or force them into poor fights. Peanut face checks the river bush, but T1 has already arrived. Gumayushi tanks the Sejuani ult, knowing that Kalista ult will save him. T1 then slowly peel back to avoid being engaged on, but also throw poke to chip away at Gen G. Gen G force their way into the river, knowing it's a 4v5, but Varus and Jace constantly poke them down every inch they walk forward. And when Faker finally arrives, Gen G are so low that the 5v5 is overwhelmingly in favor of T1, and Kassadin cleans up the fight. Let's now look at a few more team fight wins from T1. In T1 vs Damwon, T1 are on Soul Point and arrived at Dragon first. Zeus is throwing as many shock blasts as possible to whittle down Damwon. T1 understand that their team must not fight front to back against Zeri Ornn, so T1 carefully cut away from Damwon, burning Keria's flash. Faker is positioned for a flank, and T1 plan to flank Damwon if they group themselves in a dragon pit. Damwon back off, so Keria starts to get Ren stacks on Dragon. As Dragon gets lower, Damwon are inevitably pulled towards it to deny Ocean Soul, and the fight breaks out shortly. Sejuani ult denies Ornn ult, and the Smite Ren combo from T1 secure Ocean Soul. Deft then all-ins on Gumayushi, but he is saved by Kalista ult. Then all at once, Jace melee AoE damage, and Kalista ult knockup, and Kassadin AoE damage, and Draven ult AoE damage wipe out Damwon. This immaculate coordination from T1 allowed them to out-teamfight Damwon's comp, which shines in 5v5 teamfights. Finally, let's look at T1 vs Hanwha Life. As a poke pick composition, T1 know that they should not start Baron, as it increases the risk of them dying to flanks. Thus, they wait for Hanwha Life to get bored of the constant A-ramming and start Baron. T1 see that all 5 Hanwha Life members are in the Baron pit, and thus there is no flank pressure. Gumayushi and Keria then poke Hanwha Life to death, with Faker and Zeus cleaning up the low Hanwha Life members. This exact situation happened again, 20 minutes later. All of Hanwha Life are mind controlled to walk into the Baron pit, so T1 know that they are safe from any flank. Jhin, Ziggs, and Jace then have a field day, shooting down Hanwha Life, while they are losing resistances while hitting Baron, making T1's poke that much more deadlier. And while Hanwha Life wins the Baron flip, it ultimately doesn't matter, because T1 is in such a positional advantage that they kill everyone and end the game. Irelia is such a nightmare for poke champions like Ziggs and Jace, but Zeka and Life just autopiloted all game long, not hiding and looking for flank engages. Thus, T1 never felt pressured, and won through solid macro and understanding their pick-poke win condition. I'll leave you with this question. To what extent of T1's victories came from their enemies' misplays versus their own incredible plays? Let me know what you think in the comments. If you like analytical content like this, be sure to hit the like and subscribe button. Thanks for watching and see you in the next video.